from Washington, D.C. On behalf of the network of UN Network of Economic Statisticians and the Bureau for the Committee of Experts on International Statistical Classifications, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you for joining. I'm Vincent Russo. I'm with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and where I work in industrial price inflation, producer prices, and I also co-chair the technical committee, the committee that advises the U.S. Office of Management and Budget on economic classification policy, the Economic Classification Policy Committee. And I'll be chairing this webinar on behalf of the Bureau of the Committee of Experts. And this is the third and final in this series or sprint on economic classifications that began in October last year. I'm happy to say that each of the sessions has been very well attended. We had over 200 participants joining in the second webinar in November, and a similar amount in October for the first. And I think this is a reflection of the strong interest in classifications as a fundamental building block for generating high quality official statistics and integrating those in a global way. So we are pleased to see so many returning for another round today. So welcome. Our topic today is the focus on the role of technology in statistical classifications. So we'll have a series of presentations from several different regions and institutions, and each will highlight ways that technology can be leveraged to manage and maintain, deploy classifications efficiently and with accuracy as well. So really important subjects for today. And then we'll conclude, we'll also have a presentation from ASEAN on the harmonization statistics within the ASEAN community and the role that standards plays in that. And we will culminate with a highly anticipated panel discussion featuring leaders in the field of official statistics. So with that, I'll just also mention a few housekeeping announcements and etiquette reminders to stay muted so that we are not a distraction to the presenters or the participants, and I will do my best to comply with that as well. This meeting is recorded, so be mindful of that. And then we will have opportunities for discussion as well. So there's several modes for that. There's the chat. You can enter in comments there. And when we get to the discussion period after sessions 2 and 3, you may also use the raise your hand function in Teams here. So before we begin with our presentations on the role of technology, we will begin with a brief recap from the a summary of the second webinar, which was chaired by Claude Maki from Eurostat. Claude is here to offer some reflections and summary on that second webinar. So with that, I will pass it to Claude. Welcome, Claude.
Thank you, Vincent. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Also from my side, concerning the second sprint meeting on international statistical classification, the aim, would say, of the second webinar was to provide an outreach opportunity for the classification community on the evergreening and the more efficient revision process of international statistical classifications. Presentations such as that of the European Apparel and Textile Confederation that opened the webinar showed that classification are a fundamental element in the quality of statistical information, not only in the framework of official statistics, but also for the production of data in the private context. So classifications such as ISIC, CPC, and HS must reflect the current realities of economic activity, of changes in technology and in industrial structures. Here trade associations have a fundamental role in updating classification, since they know in depth the production process in the different industry and may best contribute in correcting and modernizing classifications. For this, transparency, cooperation, and coordination are imperative all along the revision cycle of ISIC and CPC. The role of international classification as an enabler for the comparison, collection, and analysis of data, not exclusively defined for official statistical purposes, was illustrated with the example of the harmonized system. So the need for keeping the classification up to date in terms of changes in technology or patterns of international trade and the necessity for stability have led to the need for a 5-year revision cycle of the harmonized system. An example of a fully functional cooperation and networking among partners of the statistical system is the Trilateral Steering Committee, composed by the statistical offices of Canada, Mexico, and the US, that since 1995 developed and maintained the Common North American Industry Classification System, NAICS. The 3 countries, all of which have full-time resources dedicated to the development and maintenance and implementation of classification, agree on a timetable for the NAICS review process. They define common research agenda, conduct consultation, both within the 3 statistical organizations and with external stakeholders, consult experts to improve decision-making, and take consensus-based decisions. The fundamental role of international classification for the production and the publication of standardized economic statistics has been also underlined by the ECLAC statistic division. So ISIC is a basic element for the harmonization process of national account series for Latin America and the Caribbean, for economic surveys, for the international trade in goods and service statistic, and the balance of payment. So what can we conclude after this second webinar? First of all, classification are a fundamental factor in the quality and timeliness of official statistical information, and for the production of data in the administration, as well as in the private sector. So not only in statistical agencies, but also outside the national statistical offices. Then there is a general agreement in having an evergreening approach to the classification, to have a regular revision cycle of classifications. And for this, the UN Committee of Experts of International Classification is going to propose to the UN Statistical Commission the introduction of a 5-year revision cycle for ISIC and CPC. This to ensure a more responsive statistical system that reflects in industry and product classification the reality in economy, society, and the environment. This for better decision making. Then the cooperation and networking among producers and users of statistical classification is fundamental and has to be enhanced. Producers of classification, subject matter people in statistical organization, as well as users of classifications. And I think here at public administration, universities, trade association, expert, etc., have to be considered as fundamental interest partners and must be integrated in the review process of statistical classification in a well working and integrated network. It has also been mentioned that there should not be anymore a real start and end of the revision of classification. Revision must become a permanent and continuous process supported by permanent working groups or committees, which continuously take care of the inputs of the stakeholders and not limit the revision of a classification to a specific limited project period. Then last but not least, it is also absolutely unavoidable for producers of classification to count on a staff with sufficient appropriate statistical skills and competences in statistical process and then classification. This is basic, fundamental as well. So these are the conclusions which may be drawn from the second webinar. And with this, I give the floor back to Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you, Claude, for that summary of that second webinar, which, as you noted, touched on many important topics and included discussions about how to move forward with maintaining classifications and how regions around the world do that in collaboration with each other. So important topics there. Thank you. Okay, so we will turn now to our session 2, which is the role of technology in the statistical classifications process. And I will invite Emilio Lopez Cano from Spain to pull up his slides here, and he will be presenting on the semi-automatic classification here for product and industry descriptions. Professor Cano is at King Juan Carlos University in Madrid and a consultant, former consultant to the UN Economic Commission for Africa. So welcome, Emilio.
Thank you very much, Vincent, and thank you everyone for joining this session. In this presentation, I will show the holistic method developed within the AFCIOT project, jointly with the UNECA team, Ana de Beza, Shining Gong, David Boko, Eleanor Kibel, and Pauline Devanet. I do my research, as Vincent said, in the Data Science Laboratory at Rey Juan Carlos University in Madrid, and I served as consultant for this project for some months in the Economic Commission for Africa. So let's start with a little background of the AFCIOT project. The project it's a joint project with UNECA, but also with World Trade Organization and the OECD. It is based on the system of indicators for African continental free trade area. And well, it was an international multidisciplinary team with several tasks. Some of the tasks of the project were the industry and product classification, that is the topic of this presentation, but also other tasks are gap estimation, policy simulation, and the visualization tool. Well, the main result, the end point of the project is a Shiny app for reporting, visualization, and policy simulation. But we will see that, as Vincent said before, the classifications are the building blocks for official statistics and also for this project. And so several important challenges were faced for the multinational scope and also for the data itself. So the aim of the project is to develop an African continental input-output table. It's the acronym of FCOT. It includes models for supply use tables, input-output tables, TIVA models. The TIVA is reading value-added indicators. So we go from national accounts to TIVA indicators and via supply and use tables from each national accounts. Each country uses different classifications and different languages. So this was one of the challenges. And transformations were needed to standardize into the 45 economic activities of TIVA. In the methodology agreed by the project partners, we can see that to reach the final AFCOT results, we start with the national accounts data. Then several transformations are performed, domestic input-output tables to separate some purchases to basic prices, etc., to finally reach these inter-country use tables and supply tables, and finally the indicators. Also, not only FCOT, not only the TIVA indicators, but also environmental and employment indicators. But just at the beginning, we can see there is a standardization step that is needed before proceeding with the rest of the process. So this is a very crucial task. This is a screenshot of the final result of the project. This visualization dashboard to exploring and visualizing the indicators via interactive maps or time series, other charts, tables, even country profile. Interactively, we can select the industries or the years, the country, etc. And to get this nice visualization at the end, we need first all the work before in this methodology. So now let's focus on the classification task of the project. That is the topic of this webinar. In this task, we needed to match national products and industries descriptions with standards, CPA21 and ISIC4 codes at 2-digit level. Well, because this is finally the transposition to the inter-country tables from TIVA. We needed these relationships. So it is important to note that to get these good-looking final results, we start with the national supply and use tables with the heterogeneous classifications, names, languages, etc., and do a lot of intermediate transformations, and finally to get here. So we start here in this very first step. Several technological options were explored. The preference was using at the beginning using supervised classification, using machine learning techniques. It worked well for 1-digit classification in the initial tests we did, but for the 2 digits, it wasn't that good. And other important drawbacks arose when trying to use supervised classification via machine learning. So also LLMs that are quite fashionable today were discussed, but finally these methods weren't considered at this stage of the project. Maybe as future work, as I will tell at the end, but at that stage it wasn't appropriate neither. And the expert assignment, previous works, some expert assignment was done, but it was very slow. It wasn't also free of errors, so it wasn't a good solution to do this manual classification. So finally, we chose a hybrid method that is a stepwise algorithm in which the whole set of descriptions is gradually reduced while the new descriptions are matched. So we start There is some previous data processing to consolidate all the standards that are available, the relationships we will see in the next slides, and some text mining data curation of all these standards. And we start taking the exact matches, then looking to string distances. We at the end classify, we can match all the description. But this classification, this matching has different levels of quality depending on the stage that we find the match. And finally, there is an expert review and final code allocation in case that some misclassifications or directly sometimes it is impossible to get anything similar. We started with a subset of countries in the project with different numbers of descriptions and languages. For example, here we have from 19 in Guinea and 175 in Mozambique. So they are quite heterogeneous, different languages, and this is an initial set of languages. But the result was prepared to for new countries, or in fact any classification that we want to match with the standard. A key feature is that there are known relationships between different standards. So in this webpage of the UN Stats, we have those relationships between CPC, CP1, and then relationship between ISIC4 and other standards, even with CPC. So we took all these standards and all the relationships, not only between standards but also between different versions, and also other sources, because we took also some classifications from an R package that is available with the relationship with ISIC. So we build this whole set of standards. So to classify a new name that we have new country with new names, we first lemmatize all the string, taking from the description with symbols, commas, and stop words. We get rid of all of this information and reach lemmas. And then lemmatize the new name. Also look for partial matches, for exact matches, for partial matches, and get a target code in the target standard. So this is the idea and how we have implemented all the method. We used the R statistical software and programming language for coding the algorithm. Well, R is open source. I assume that you know this. It was one of the requirements even in the project, because the other the OECD data comes in our format, and it was more convenient. And we had all the machine learning, text mining, and any modeling method that we would need. We have here in this framework. And the Shiny apps for the final visualization. Shiny is a framework for building interactive web applications with just our regular code. So what you saw in the interface, in the screenshot is just our regular code, and there is not internet programming there. The algorithm is embedded in R scripts and functions, completely documented, that could eventually be packaged in another package. This is a screenshot of the standardization script that gathers all the available standards and versions and their relationships among them. And when running this script, we have the large table with all the standards and the lemmatized standards with this data curation, text mining. The core function of we have developed needs just a data frame with codes and names. So we are generating some data frame for the script. just think about just an Excel file with a column with descriptions and national codes, and from this we fit the target standard, and we need the files generated by the previous script. And the output of this function is a new data frame with the matches that can be automatically saved in an Excel file that is used for the rest of the modules of the project. Well, in addition to using the functions and the code, we developed a Shiny application precisely mostly for this last step of the expert that can change a classification. We don't have time to do a large demo or to see this video that is here, but basically it is an application, an internal application. This isn't the visualization, the other visualization tool, just for the users of UNECA. In which one can upload the file with codes and description. Actually, this is a typical Excel file with codes and description, and just in the application can be uploaded this kind of file, set what is the language and the code, run find the matchings within that runs the code underneath. Found the algorithm find some matches, and the matches are classified with a level of quality. Some of them are good quality because it's an exact matching. Other matches are bad quality. So here is where the expert can select the given bad matching and look for a matching for a target code that better fits with the description, and just change the codes in the interface, and then the user can download the information in a file and use it wherever they need. So this was developed for the RCOT project, but they can use the method and the interface and the software for any other use. So finally, some notes for discussion later. The standardization of categories appears in the initial steps of the indicators building pipeline, not only in this project, but in many projects. Wrong classifications may lead to wrong indicator values, hence in wrong information for decision making, what in computer science is known as garbage in, garbage out. So it's very important to have good standardization at the beginning. Automatic classification and matching is a major challenge in economic statistics and in official statistics. Well, hybrid models, as the one that we propose, are useful in many situations and provide robustness. Because all models that we can develop with machine learning, large language models or whatever, were always subject, as in every statistics, to some error. So there is room for improvement, and this is the last slide. We can add more standards and the relationship. We can include models that learn from experts' input. This is not done, but when an expert assigns manually new code, we can record and use it. Explore how to include large language models to difficult matches, and are some rule-based controls to avoid clear misclassifications with some words that can be identified, and try further data science techniques as unsupervised classification or Bayesian models. So thank you very much, and I am open to questions after in the discussion. Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you, Emilio, very much. Thank you. So so we'll, as I mentioned before, we'll go to questions as we can. Thank you again. We'll move on to our friends at FAO in Rome, Caterina Caracciolo and Carola Fabi will be presenting on the Caliper platform that FAO developed to improve the interoperability of statistical classification. So very, very powerful tool here, and I look forward to the presentation. Caterina, Carola.
Yes, hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I will just give a short introduction. My name is Carola Fabi. I'm a senior statistician with the FAO Statistics Division. And I would like just to say a few words about the Caliper website and suite of tools before I hand the floor to Caterina, who will guide you through the whole presentation and suite of tools and services. So first of all, what is Caliper? Today and right now, Caliper is a website and a suite of tools and services that we have developed, but it is also a methodology to modernize the way in which we think and use the statistical classifications. A little background, the whole development was triggered in a project upon request of a large global donor who wanted and needed to increase the transparency and interoperability of aid data, aid being a non-traditional statistical domain with basically just one internationally recognized database built by the OECD and its related classification, but neither the database nor the classification are really overly comprehensive, and the classification is prone to some interpretation. So that's what really led the development of Caliper, where we wanted to make statistical classifications, starting with the aid one, easily searchable, comparable, downloadable, and usable in information systems without ambiguity or loss of meaning. And on the other hand, we wanted to make the classification accessible in a repository that would support users and avoid the risk of unnecessary duplication or even worse, uncontrolled spin-offs, uncontrolled derivations from the original source. So what Caliper implements today is a coherent, comprehensive and sustainable approach, both for the production and the dissemination, and the use of statistical classification that can benefit the data producers and the data users. And the main novelty is in the technology and in the application of principle of open and fair data in covering the entire classification life cycle and in supporting the different types of users along the workflow. So today we will just focus on the two main categories of users, which are actually humans and the machines. And so what we really would like to convey is that the platform and the tools are a linked open data and an open access and give open access to a single source for classifications, possibly in the entire international family of international classifications, which can be updated and maintained by the custodians themselves. Yeah? So to come forth and try and support all the challenges of more frequent update and the strive for an increased use of the international classifications. And with this, I pass the floor to Caterina, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. This is Caterina. Can you just confirm that you can hear me well?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so after the introduction by Carola, this is a few words. It's a recap. The emphasis for us for today is on the fact that we have a set of tools, a methodology, and the need and the wish to address the entire life cycle of statistical classifications. We had some limitations also inside that we experienced inside in the organization, and we built from those. So the need for a common repository for code lists and classification, the need for a dissemination platform that would disseminate content, not only the catalog, not only text, but the actual codes usable by machines, and the lack of a common model, so that not different models would be applied for different classifications, which was the common. So for today, overview of Caliper, 3 highlights on coupling functionalities and users, and then our ongoing work on the global platform in collaboration with UNSD. this is what, excuse me. How come? Doesn't
Do you
work?
see the animation?
Can you see the animation? No, no. Okay, well, now you can. Okay, so this is the screenshot from the website. You are invited to look around. You will find everything that we mentioned today. You will find it on the website, and we're very happy, as usual, as always, to receive your feedback. Anyway, we are not going to present the website really, but rather the underlying principle and the actual functionalities that are offered by Calibre. So I'm sure you are all aware of the open movement and the fair data and metadata movement. So we are in particular interested in the interoperability part of the FAIR. But how does this translate for us, an FAO with Calibre? So first of all, the use of open formats for data natively inside the tools and for export. So you're aware of, well, CSV, JSON, RDF, XML, that family of formats. Open source software, these are name of some of the tools involved in the Calibre platform. Say. Standard models and standard metadata schemes, RDF, Dublin Core, SCOS, SCOS, just to mention a few. Documentation, this is very important because everything is documented starting from the models adopted for the classifications and the data model and the interaction with the tools and methodology of conversions and so on. And collaboration. This is well, it's the result and the basis of what we I just mentioned. A very simplified view of a classification lifecycle in Calibre, but it's so simplified that it's not even a cycle here. But we know that there is a cycle after dissemination. There is a feedback. So that, for example, in the next revision, that are accommodated in next revision of any classification. So here in the center, I hope you can see the cursor, the pointer here. In the center, we have a Calibre as a repository and the editing tool. Repository of what? Of classifications, correspondences, and translations. Languages. So it's very important for us that translations are always accessible. All languages are accessible together, together with the main structure of the classification. And of course, the metadata that goes with that. Editing. The editing part supports the editorial workflow and all other common editing operations that we need, including a validation of edits and then versioning and history. Then from this very same data that we have here in the repository, we have two, that data feeds to different tools addressing different users. So there is a dissemination for users included in the website, as the icon should suggest, and a dissemination for machines, primarily downloads and API, so connection to the services. So in the next three slides, we're going to see a little bit more in detail in the three parts. Editing. So we have we support the normal editing tasks for classifications with a degree of flexibility that is very convenient for us. So it's very smooth and straightforward to add, extend the hierarchy as well as extending the pieces of information, so the properties attached to individual items. The support to multilingual content, I stress it again, it was fundamental for us that we have all the time multilingual content, especially non-Latin based languages in terms of alphabet. And so this is very well addressed, and then history validation and versioning. The other side is the collaborative side of the editing, so the possibility of defining a workflow depending on the classification and the needs. So a graphical example, a very simple essential workflow would go from a draft, validation, and publication, each done by different or the same editor, but there could be something different, for example, with a step of translation done by domain experts, and so on. This can be defined classification by classification. Second highlight is the dissemination side for humans, for people. This is a screenshot from the search and browsing service you can find from the website. We have a global search that searches against the entire data set, the entire repository. I hope you can see it, but it was a search on typed in wheat. Then you had results from the entire repository. In this case, 41 matches in 6 data sets. And if you find the one you want, say this one at the bottom, you click and you are prompted to the entire the classification opened and the item you want, and so on. And so this is the label that could be the thing you are interested in, or the hierarchy, or matches, correspondences. So that was searching classification, and then there is a similar service for searching alignments, correspondences between. In this case, the source data set is a FAO commodity classification. We have correspondences with these 3. There's a cascade menu, so you could choose the one you want. And a screenshot from what you receive, what you get once clicking on any of those. In this case, the crop, a list of crops for the census, agricultural census. Third highlight for you is the services for machines. Queries, I won't talk about the download, but let's look at the queries and APIs. So the possibility of connecting for machines, computer programs to connect to the Caliper repository and get the data back for further integration information systems. We have a Sparkle endpoint. I mentioned in a previous slide RDF as a fundamental, as a data model, one of the open you can close your microphone. Thank you. So Sparkle is the query language for RDF, and we chose this way of disseminating data for machines. So REST APIs can be built on top of that. What I would like to emphasize in this approach is that we have one single point of access from the web where you can file your query. That can be any, depending on the data or your information needs. And so an example from the website. So you can go to the website, you will see a list of the queries that we made for you to test. One simple one, list of items in a given classification with some information, pieces of information attached. You go, this is the query you will get. You go to the address of the Sparkle endpoint, file your query there, and you'll get results, data. So this is a visualization for people, for us, of course, but then you can get the same data, a JSON format for your computer application. Okay, this is the highlight section completed here. Now let's go to the ongoing work. Right now, we are busy setting up clones of Caliper. So we're going to have a Caliper installed on a global platform. That would be like the cloud of the UN, of UNSD. And that will be dedicated to maintenance and dissemination of international classifications. So the point here is that custodians, FAO, UNSD, or others that could later join would benefit from a common infrastructure, but at the same time keeping control over their data. This is a fundamental for all of us, of course. So define the whole editorial workflow within an agreed governance. So we don't want to have a mess either. For FAO, the Caliper clone for FAO would be an internal instance serving internal statistical processes and information systems, with the idea of supporting ad hoc aggregation of codes for statistical computation and allow for lookup. So the same graphical interface that we have for dissemination will be used by our statisticians inside organizations without the need to, go open an SQL table of Excel and so on. And also add different type of content, such as conversion files. This is exactly the same picture you have seen a few slides ago. What would be the difference when we go to the global platform? Well, the difference is that the content will be more content, and content in blue, it's let's say the namespace. So let's say the space of freedom in the publication of the management of content. We already have content from FAO and UN. And others that might join would have the same and define the OR addresses and naming. More differences, well, there would be the possibility of connecting, partner connect to the same repository, distributing the data in their own web interface. So what can we conclude? Our conclusion today is that for FAO, we are having good results. So we have started the connecting Caliper, connecting internal statistical systems to Caliper repository, and it costed little effort. So basically, we connect to this Sparkle endpoint. And the plan for the future is to complete the setup of the internal clone, including also the editing environment, and expand coverage. So for custodians, we have now a fairly large community of custodians, organizations interested and actively working on the same topic and related technologies. UNSD already mentioned, Eurostat is very active, and various national statistical offices. I've seen some of them in representatives and also in the list of in the attendees of this webinar. So what we are doing in this community is to work and collectively address the same needs. We have the same needs, and we want to address them in a unified way, especially for what concerns the data integration and the maintenance of classifications. This concludes our presentation. These are our contacts that will stay in the slides. If you want to stay abreast of the development, you might want to subscribe to the alerts on metadata and statistical data for FAO, and a few pointers for you. Caliper, catalog, statistics.
Thank you very much, Caterina and Carola, for that presentation on Caliper, and we will sort of continue on that theme now as we welcome Stefan Kret from Statistics Canada. Stefan is the Assistant Director for the Center for Statistical and Data Standards at Statistics Canada, and he is presenting on a statistical classification management tool here that StatsCan has developed. So pass it over to you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I hope that you can see the sharing of the presentation on the screen. Yes. Okay.
Yes,
great.
we do. It's very good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. So yes, I mean, thanks a lot for inviting us to present at this webinar. So hopefully we'll be able to give a sort of a complementary perspective in terms of the tools we're using to be able to help us manage classifications. So Statistics Canada has quite a lot of classifications that they do manage and they do disseminate. And what we've seen over the years, it's been quite a challenge to be able to centralize most of these statistical classification within a sort of a common area. We've had great systems in the past. We do have what we call our integrated metadata database, which has served us great purpose in terms of centrally managing, I guess, most of the core classifications within the organizations. This technology is aging a bit. It doesn't have necessarily the right sort of interoperability features that we need nowadays. So it's really forcing us to look in terms of what technology can offer us to actually do a much better job in this space. Traditionally, I mean, a lot of the management capabilities were done through Excel and then uploaded onto the IMDb. We have a lot of different sections within the organizations that have custom systems where they do manage statistical classifications. One great example is with our international trade partners. They do use a sort of a homegrown system to manage the HS classification and sort of the extensions that they've made with the HS classification, which is the harmonized system classification. As well with dissemination, quite a challenge to be able to manage that. I mean, they have a different system to be able to manage these aspects. I'd say one of the challenges is that whenever we disseminate data, sometimes we need to extend classifications or create variants, very often because we have confidentiality concerns on releasing data in certain industries if we do release by industry. So this is forcing our business partners to be able to, I'd say, organize and group maybe certain categories to sort of avoid wrong disclosure of these data points. So when we consider sort of from a data management perspective, we are starting to align pretty well with the data management body of knowledge, and there is a concepts that relate to master data and reference data. So in our organizations, we're wanting to sort of offer this reference data as a service, which I mean, fundamentally, I think statistical classifications is really what we're trying to sort of better manage within the organization and also better expose to our users internally, but also to our systems internally and externally as well as we're moving forward. So as you can see on the left side, I mean, we have different types of reference data that needs to be managed. What we don't see is correspondence and crosswalks, which is also part of the reference data story. So it's really important. Previous presenter, Carolina, mentioned the links to FAIR. We also are trying to sort of consider FAIR very carefully. So having this type of service would just allow us to better offer reference data as a service through the alignment to the FAIR principles themselves. So I think this is really, really important. Just wanted to share this reference architecture that was developed by the Common Statistical Data Architecture, which was released in 2018 by a task force under the UN ECE, HLG Modernization of Official Statistics. I think this was really great work, and this is a reference architecture that is not necessarily widely known across the international community, and it really provides a data-centric reference architecture to help statistical agencies design and develop data and metadata solutions. So the CSDA provides an extensive catalog of information capabilities that systematically describe what an agency do with both data and metadata. So this is a bit of what the architecture is about. And as you can see, I mean, it's pretty small, the elements within the architecture itself, but I mean, it's got a lot of related capabilities that that interrelate or interdepend in terms of proper statistical management, classification management. at this point. I just wanted to point out that very often the value that we have in terms of managing statistical classification is with the additional metadata that needs to be managed. So I mean, people look at categories. I mean, they're interested in the label and the description, but also managing, I'm going to say, additional attributes such as illustrative examples, what's included, what's excluded, also the index terms. I mean, we're getting really big in terms of search and discovery, but there's also, I think we need to get ready for AI, ML. This is becoming really prominent within our space. So we need to make sure that we have that foundation available to enable, I'm going to say these upcoming capabilities. I'm trying to change. I don't think I'm able to. I think I've lost control over the slideshow. Let me see if I can just reshare. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, so right now you should be able to see screen managed statistical classifications.
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry about
Aria.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for us, as I mentioned, I mean, we need to modernize our solutions to manage statistical classification. So the first step that we did, I'm going to say 5-6 years ago, was to do this environmental scan in terms of what other international organizations or national statistical organizations were doing in this space. I mean, we really wanted to privilege the borrow-buy model versus building something brand new. I mean, building software nowadays is extremely expensive. So we just wanted to make sure that we can privilege in the right orders if we can either purchase or borrow a piece of technology that's out there. One of the main requirements was to make sure that it was GSIM compliant. So GSIM is the generic statistical information model. And this, I mean, was initially created by the UNECE. But when we're talking about statistical classifications, this was the next generation of back, I'm going to say back in the 90s when the community had came out with what they call the Neuchâtel terminology model. The terminology model was really used to be able to come up with a common language in managing classifications and changes to classifications for the community. And this was very helpful. This was rolled into the generic statistical information model. And this is giving us a really good data model, a meta model in some ways, to be able to manage classifications. So as we reached out internationally, there was a great initiative that were undertaken by New Zealand.
Sorry to interrupt, Stefan, but somebody is saying in the chat that you are showing the wrong slide.
You should be able to see the slide manage statistical classifications. Is that?
Yes, that's what we
now
see.
You are showing area.
Okay, so and
yeah.
I'm just going to reshare this, but using a different mechanism. I'm using the live PowerPoint presentation. People have the ability to change their slides, but how about if I'll just.
No, you can keep. I think the user probably just needs to synchronize to the presentation. If you adjust the slides on your own, I think it brings you to a different point in the presentation, and to go back to the what the presenter is presenting, you have to synchronize. But go ahead, because we want to make sure we.
Yeah. I'm just actually going to, Vincent, I'm going to share this differently. So using the non sort of Office 365. Okay. So the tool that was developed, this tool was developed by New Zealand Statistical Office, but not by themselves. They actually outsourced this to a private company, which was Metadata Technologies North America. And they are great in terms of building systems in terms of metadata. And this was really great for us. It uses a life cycle approach in terms of managing statistical classification. I mean, initially your classification starts in a draft mode and then it sort of goes through different phases to make its way to publication at this point. It is really important that this workflow can be customized within the tooling, and it's really allowing us to manage, I'm going to say, the number of consultations that are necessary given that the classification itself. It is built on linked open data technologies behind the scene. So it is an RDF sort of system in many ways. It does use complementary relational databases to manage some of the administrative features, but I think in general, it is sort of aligning in terms of great metadata technologies behind the scene. And I mentioned earlier sort of the need to be able to manage additional information, such as I'm going to say exclusions, index terms. This tool will allow you to even customize even further certain attributes that are really, really important for certain statistical classifications. So it does allow that customization within the tool. It also offers rich rich features or functionalities in terms of importing or exporting classifications, so which I think is really, really great for the community. Quickly mention that reference data as a service is not just about code sets, code list classifications, it's also about sort of the mapping. So within a statistical classification world, we do have correspondence tables and crosswalks. So correspondence tables is really how we manage changes between versions of a classification. As crosswalks, it's more about managing changes or understanding the mappings between between different types of statistical classifications. This is really, really important, and this is where we built a lot of processes to be able to map data. So if we have systems that integrate the integrity of these mapping rules within a system, it just enables sort of a much higher quality sort of output and a way to centralize and say that the mappings themselves. Often we lose control, and this becomes recreated depending on whoever wants to sort of map with these classifications themselves. Just a note, again, this is coming from the GSIM driven approach. So the different types of changes, which you can see in the screen, I'm just showing sort of the correspondence between version 2007 1.0 of the NAICS classification to version 2012, and the screen has filtered sort of all the merger changes. So you can see the types of changes are really aligned to GSIM at this point, which is very, very helpful. As well, interoperability is becoming more and more important, so we need to make sure, especially through FAIR, but through other initiatives, that we do offer this interoperability features for our users. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I just wanted to say, I mean, it uses sort of the modern open API documentation approach using the Swagger files, and it really has a lot of the functionalities available through APIs, either accessing the information, but also searching as well. So I think this is really, really important. It also gives us the ability to integrate with the SCOS, XCOS sort of format, which is the underlying format behind the Caliper system. I know that Eurostat also uses a lot of this format behind the scenes. So it actually has this integration point with other data models in mind. So what were lessons learned? I can see that I have about a couple of minutes to go, so I just have 2 slides to go. So in terms of lessons learned, what we're seeing is that interoperability is gaining a lot of popularity. Our users are demanding access to classifications with the use of APIs. Our other federal departments want to modernize their tech stack, and interoperability is becoming a key feature. And what we're seeing is that we're lacking technical specifications in terms of the APIs themselves. So we do have the proprietary APIs that are coming out of the ARIA system. I don't think that's good enough for the whole community to be able to depend on. I think we do need these open specifications moving forward. This would allow us better consensus in making sure that we can align technologies in the future to that common technical language in terms of data itself. Also, I mentioned the API links to SCOS, XCOS. I mean, I think really what's really important is understanding sort of the differences between GSIM and the RDF sort of view of things, which are somewhat different. I mean, they're very similar in many ways, but there are differences, and we really need to understand the differences. So as an example, if I wanted to sort of publish Statistics Canada's classifications within a Caliper system, I think what I would need to know is understand basically the points that are comparable, but also where I have differences so that I can make sure that I don't lose value in doing this. Vice versa as well, I think is really important. I bring in other standards. I mean, DDI, SDMX. SDMX is on the screen. We're seeing a lot of partners that are really trying to use SDMX to manage code lists, and they're managing classifications because the tools are there. The tools are open, and we're seeing sort of this trend that's happening within NSOs nowadays. So this is, we need to be very careful, and SDMX is actually growing in terms of version. They're going to version 3. They're offering inheritance in terms of code lists, which is a great feature, I think, for statistical classification. So understanding what does this mean in our space, I think, becomes really, really important. Just wanted to mention that offering a Sparkle query engine is not sufficient. I mean, these I'm going to say advanced semantic experts know how to query using Sparkle. So Sparkle is really coming out of the, I'm going to say, the XCOS sort of RDF or open linked open data approach. So we just want to mention that I think we need to complement this with APIs that maybe talk sort of a slightly different language. And also the fact that we're using version-based artifacts, so version-based classifications can create challenges. So very quickly moving forward, I think we need more collaboration, especially in terms of that technical landscape, in terms of statistical classification, these APIs. It would be great to develop specifications, open specifications from a community approach, because I think this is really the foundation of moving forward as we try to enable with AI applications, and also set expectations in terms of the role of standards. I mean, what is the role of, let's say, GSIM versus SDMX versus Caliper at this point, so that we don't confuse the users and we don't sort of create a competitive mode when we don't need to. I think we need to sort of work together and make sure we can identify a landscape that is really convenient for the users.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, and stay. I have to say I was intrigued by your you put that last slide back up there, or your podcast. What was it?
Assayers podcast.
Assayers, yes, the Assayers. I thought that was very, very clever. So thank you so much for that. It was excellent, and some very important takeaways there. So thank you, Stefan, for that. And now we turn to your Stats Canada colleague, Saman Rudgar, for a deeper dive into how machine learning was used in the retail commodity survey in Canada. So thank you, Saman, and go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm assuming you guys can see my slides right now.
Can.
Perfect. Well, yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Saman Rudgar, and I'm a senior analyst here at Statistics Canada. I've been at StatsCan for the past 5 years, and I look forward to discussing with you a project that I've been working on since I started with the agency. It's a project that I hold dearly, and with the use of AI and ML growing exponentially every day, I hope that you can take any part of what I share today and apply it to the work you do, even if it's just an idea. Today, I'll be sharing how ML has transformed our work here at StatsCan, specifically with one of the agency's pioneering ML projects, the use of ML text classification for the retail commodity survey, and the improvements that it's brought to the survey, along with the challenges as well as the lessons learned. So if we start, I'll give a brief rundown of the retail commodity survey. It's a survey under the Retail Service Industry Division that collects national level retail sales by commodity. These commodities are classified by the North American Product Classification System, often referred to as NAPS, of course. And conventionally, the data is collected by respondents who are in sample via questionnaires that they fill out, containing the respondents' breakdown of monthly sales by NAPS. And when I say respondents, I'm usually referring to Canadian businesses by establishment that are within the retail sector. So think, clothing stores, grocery stores, gas station, etc. And so our mandate here at StatsCan is to provide Canadians with statistical information and analysis that is accurate and, of course, that matters. That mandate can, of course, only be achieved by obtaining data, and we must evolve our means of data collection as time goes on. As part of our modernization efforts over the last few years, we've been branching out to obtain alternative data sources. It was determined that scanner data can be used as an alternative data source within various divisions here at Statistics Canada, such as the Producer Prices Division, the Consumer Prices Division, as well as the Retail Service Industry Division, just to list some examples. And of course, RSID, the Retail Service Industry Division, is the division that houses the Retail Commodity Survey, which is also referred to as RCS. And so as of 2016, StatsCan acquired scanner data from a select amount of large Canadian retailers. Now, what are the characteristics of the scanner data, and what exactly do I mean when I refer to scanner data? Well, of course, when you go shopping and you have a basket full of items and are checking out, all of your items get scanned, and of course, it's used to determine the price of each item as well as your total owed. For multiple reasons, the items are scanned and stored and kept in a database. Well, this is the data which we obtain, and an aggregate by either day, week of each item sold by quantity, price, as well as its location. So as you can imagine, this translates into millions of rows of information about retail product sales. So to use the scanner data as a replacement for conventional RCS survey data, we would have to transform and aggregate this data into sales total by NAPS. This data doesn't come to us already labeled by NAPS, of course, and it's not really possible to manually code all scanner data entries monthly. I haven't personally tried, but I'm just gonna take my own word for it. So this is where the idea of using machine learning for text classification came into play. What if we created a text classification model to assign NAPS codes to? This would be one of the first projects within the agency where text classification with machine learning would be used and implemented. So how do we develop an ML model for the scanner data? Well, here's a brief outline of how we reached this process. We took a sample of the raw scanner data that represented the distribution of the data, meaning that it covered all products sold for the given retailer with a distribution of each product type matching the true population of the scanner data. This typically consisted of a year of products so that the model would be introduced to the seasonality, such as barbecue and camping equipment for the summer, Halloween costumes and decorations in October, Christmas trees around Christmas time, and materials for harsh, cold Canadian winters, which some of you in attendance here may not be too familiar with. Luckily, I'll add to that. So after that, the sample of data is provided to our subject matter experts that are familiar with NAPS and are sort of, encapsulated in that world of NAPS and classification, specifically within retail products. And they coded the products with NAPS codes to create a labeled data set. Once the subject matter experts completed the coding exercise, the labeled data set was then processed and cleaned. This cleaned and processed labeled data set was then split into a training test to train the model, and of course a testing set. Its performance was tested on the test set to provide us with metrics on the performance. These metrics included F1 scores, of course, probabilities, correct and incorrectly predicted products, and we also considered the sales volume of correct and incorrect predictions, so that we sort of have a scope of, how well its predictions are in an economic sense. So if 98% of the sales were correct, then that, how much are we really going to spend time on that small margin of error there? So now that creating a text classification model was completed, our next step was to integrate a pipeline that would ingest the raw scanner data into our survey processing systems. Here's a snapshot of our current scheduler pipeline that was built with Python. The scheduler is run weekly and checks for new raw scanner data files. When a file is observed, a new one I should say, the program needs to read the file and breaks the file up by products, locations, as well as transactions. The master products repository contains products which the model has already encountered and predicted. The program compares these products to the new file and identifies which products are new, and the model is called to perform predictions on them. After the new products are predicted, they are added to the master product repository, and the same logic is used for the locations part of the scanner data file. The reason why we have these master product repositories is for reduced runtimes and efficiency purposes. It would be quite inefficient to use processing power and spend time to continually predict the same product thousands and thousands of times. So when a new product is seen, its predicted NAPS is given, and then it's added to the product repository so that moving forward, that product repository key as well as the NAPS and product can be just called rather than having to be repredicted. Now, finally, the program stores the transaction data into its own file, which consists of location key, product key, quantity, sales, as well as date. At the end of the month, the program checks to see if there is a month of transactional data available. If there is, the program creates an aggregated output that can be loaded into the survey processing system. This aggregate output contains the date range of the month, location, NAPs, as well as sales. The locations and NAPs are obtained from the master product repository and location repositories and are linked to the transactional data with their respective keys. As you can see over here, there's a product key that links it to the transaction file, as well as a location key that links it to the transaction file as well. So with the Pioneer project, for both its machine learning applications as well as its alternative data source, what are some of the benefits we've observed over the last 5 years? Well, for starters, we have reduced respondent burden for the retailers, which we obtain the scanner data from. As an agency, our goal is to provide Canadians with accurate data. However, we also don't want to burden Canadian companies as well. By receiving scanner data from these companies, they can just provide us with their data that meets the needs for multiple surveys within our agency, rather than having to fill out questionnaires for each and every survey. Another important benefit from the integration that we've observed has been the timelier way we receive and process the data. The survey collection process can take some time to get us, and sometimes we have late responses for that reason. With the scanner data ML process, we are guaranteed the data at a much earlier time than our traditional means of data collection. Our automated process collects the data and processes it to fit the required outputs for RCS in an easier and quicker manner. Not only do we receive and process the data quicker now, but the data is also more granular and accurate than the conventional respondent questionnaires. By collecting scanner data rather than respondent questionnaires, we have essentially cut the middleman out and obtain our data straight from the source. Our model is trained and tested by subject matter experts, as I said, that are very familiar with NAPs, whereas before, we would be reliant on the respondent having to break down their sales down by commodity, which can potentially distort the true value of each commodity, because we're sort of at their mercy and their understanding of the classification of NAPs. So with this improved accuracy came improved data quality as well. The sample of RCS consists of establishments all across Canada. We can't collect from every single store within the retail sector, as it clearly wouldn't be feasible. So establishments within the sample sometimes have late or no responses, which required imputations that can bring down the overall data quality of the sample. With the scanner data integration, we now have a census of data for each retailer data provider that extends to accurate data on a numerous number of establishments linked to a given retailer, meaning we can pull more establishments into sample, which we know have a high data quality, thus increasing the size, or sorry, I should say, increasing the data quality of the overall RCS sample. So now what are the challenges that we face with this integration? Well, for starters, this method of data collection is a front-end investment at the end of the day. The setup for this project required upfront costs before its long-term benefits could be fully realized. It's important to note that the setup costs for some respondents were costlier than others, as differences in data quality would mean more time was spent cleaning up the data before being able to use it. As you may have guessed, the difficult part of a supervised model is having to create a labeled data set for it to learn off of. This process is quite labor intensive and can only be limited to individuals that are experienced within the NAP subject matter. In our case, quite a bit of time was spent on labeling the dataset for training and testing. Despite having methods of labeling the data, it's still a lengthy process that includes a lot of verification. From the start of this project to the implementation into production, we were faced by hardware constraints. You must understand that there's a difference between receiving questionnaires from a retailer or respondent than receiving all their data, which is obviously a much larger volume. So as I said, retailer scanner data is much larger in volume, and processing the data for our pipelines has always been a bit of a challenge. Processing power used for model creation and predictions can be quite taxing as well, especially with the constant emergence of newer and more complex models. A challenge we've experienced is setting up a platform to optimize the scanner data pipeline, as well as an efficient method for storing the data. Now, on the software side, we have faced challenges as well. Access to open source software in a closed network environment can be quite challenging. In the early days of the scanner data project, we faced the challenge of using and accessing open source libraries and packages for both Python and R into our closed network environment. I can only assume that many. Yeah.
I was just going to suggest that maybe we move forward to the lessons learned, because I want to make sure we leave a little bit of time for questions, and we're getting a little. But because I want to make sure we get to the yes, yeah, let's.
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, a major lesson learned is the importance of exploring the data. So it's imperative to ask yourself, does the data provide the solutions to what we need? Is the quality of the data sufficient to meet our needs? In our case, there were some retailers that had very vague text descriptions, which is what we need for a natural language processing model to perform its predictions on. So with the exploratory data analysis, we also compared the scanner data to what our respondents were providing to us at the time. And by doing so, we learned that sometimes respondent data wasn't including specific commodities, or that the scanner data sales values didn't line up with what we had before and required further investigation as to why. Having a pipeline that can be scaled up is of course important as well. There's always investment or a change between scanner data providers, and as time goes on, we're obtaining more data from multiple retailers. So it's important to have a pipeline that is flexible to changes to existing retailers as well as additional retailers. So our initial pipeline wasn't really equipped well enough to deal with these processing of numerous retailers, which forced us to create a new pipeline that was able to handle multiple retailers. Despite being successful in this effort, in future ML projects, the first thing we'll consider will be how to produce a process that can be scaled up with ease. And so another important thing is, lesson learned, I should say, would be keeping up with the literature. So machine learning and AI is a rapidly growing field of study. And so there's always breakthrough products being developed at the time. And when we've initially developed our first model a few years ago, we sort of had tunnel vision on the algorithm used, which was XGBoost. We were fortunate enough to begin keeping up with the literature on the time we were getting ready to create a new model for NAPS 2022, which is why we switched from XGBoost to BERT, a powerful text classification model that's pre-trained on Wikipedia data. So moving forward, we keep up with the literature and of natural language processing and see what new products emerge to ensure that we're using up-to-date industry standards. So luckily at StatsCan, we have plenty of ad hoc groups and committees that meet every month to share and brainstorm and discuss various natural language processing model projects. So this really helps with keeping up with the literature and being up to date. And the final lesson learned is really bridging the gap between developer and subject matter. So over the course of this project, we've learned the importance of collaboration between our development team as well as subject matter experts. So this project would not really be possible without one or the other. Having an environment where both teams can cross-collaborate with ease is very crucial. And on an HR component, it's also key to have employees with technical backgrounds that are familiar with the subject matter as well. And you know, this can be difficult from an HR standpoint, as sort of talent for data science can be quite competitive. And yeah, that's sort of the sum of our lessons learned. So thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you, Saman. Thank you so much for adding that very practical example there of how this can be applied. So thank you very much. So we will turn now to Nathan Randriamanana from France, who will extend the theme a bit on applying machine learning in the case of classification of business activities. Go ahead, Nathan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And your slides are coming up. There they are. Just get them in.
Can you confirm me you can see the presentation?
I can see the presentation. Just it's not in display mode.
Sorry. Is it good now?
I'm still seeing it in the sort of the work mode there, but let's move forward. I want to make sure we want to leave a few time for at least a couple questions here. So if it's not coming through on the regular display, we'll improvise with this.
Yeah, it's strange.
As long as you can advance it.
F5. It doesn't work. F5. The button F.
F5. Yes.
Yeah, it's.
I did F5. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
I think
Sorry
I
about
just
that.
try again.
Okay. Try it again.
Yeah. No.
There we go.
Is it good?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay.
No worries.
So I am a data scientist working at INSEE. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to introduce you the new methods based on machine learning to classify business activities. So first, I'll introduce you the strategy and the method used at INSEE to assign an activity code. Then we'll dive in deeper on the mechanism of this machine learning model. And finally, we'll see how we use this asset for the next revision. So how do we assign an activity code? The firm knows different processes. When an enterprise is set up, a form is filled in and a large amount of information is sent to INSEE. And this includes a little description of the activity by the firm. A firm can have multiple establishments. And the interesting thing here is that we only consider the most important activity. So we don't have the problem of which activity to choose. We also have a feedback with the claims when the enterprises disagree with activity code given by INSEE. And for further investigation, we also have surveys in which enterprises are asked about the breakdown of their activity. So how we do it up until November 2022. So we used an automatic label coding system called SECOR. In this, we had a file of encoding examples, an example of a code with a label example. And what was done was that the firms organized in the way they completed the activity description, and depending on that activity description, SECOR returned a code. It was not always the case. Sometimes no code were suggested by the algorithm, and then it was then coded manually by a human being. Now we have a totally different approach. Since November 2022, we have implemented a new model based on machine learning fast text. The idea is it's a supervised machine learning model. So we trained it on 10 million observations. It was coded by the old algorithm SECOR or manually. The advantages of this method is that we have 100% results, contrary to SECOR, even with a low accuracy rates. And we can also decide to maintain a manual check if the model is not confident enough. So we define a threshold on the confidence interval. So if the model is not confident enough, we give it to human review. For human review, we have two possibilities. We have machine learning assisted human review. So our colleagues can choose the top 5 predictions of the machine learning model to manually check the activity codes, or it can totally from scratch write the code manually. Statistically, during this year, most of the code was automatically given by fast text. Sometimes it can be up to 80%, but in average, it's a little bit more than 60%. And even with human review, we have a huge rate of machine learning assisted human review. So most of the time, fast text is used to classify the activity. So how does this model work? We'll dive in deeper. So it's an open source model, which is interesting for us, developed by Facebook's AI research lab. And the main assets of this algorithm is that it's really fast. You can train it on millions of activity description in less than 10 minutes. And even for inference, it has a high response. So for that reason, it seamlessly integrates into IT infrastructure without imposing excessive demand. So you don't need GPU or costly infrastructure, which is a real issue with most of the deep learning algorithm. So to understand what is inside FastText, you need to understand some components. One of the components is how do you do multi-class classification? We use an algorithm called 1vs rest or 1vs all classifier. And I won't go too much in details, but the idea is to train a binary classifier for each classes. And so that way you can have a probability to belong to which code or which code for the activity description. So it's pretty convenient for interpretation, and it's a simple implementation. FastText also use the idea of word embedding. You can give an abstract representation of words, so it can catch the semantic of the words. For instance, it can make sure that the word working and worked are similar. It also used there are also another components called feature extraction with the use of n-grams. The idea is to not giving the raw text data in its whole, but split it in n-grams for better results. So you can see the similarity not only between words, but between group of words for the classification. And if you put all that together, we have FastText. So this is FastText. Inside you have a feature extraction layer, embedding and classification, and model, contrary to deep learning models, which can have multiple layers. This one only have one layer and is pretty fast. So this was the theoretical side. About performance, for the various level of the NACE nomenclature, we have good overall performance, whether it's level 5, level 4, or even level 1. And most of the classification is among the top 5 most probable prediction in most of the cases. That's why we had 60% coded automatically and 40% machine learning assisted with human review. We can be sure that in the top 5 predictions, you can have the right code most of the time. We've put that model in production, and now there are some challenges, including, and we are still working on it, about organizational issues, real-time monitoring, regular retraining, and also a data annotation tool based on Label Studio. We are trying to increase our maturity in terms of MLOps. It's still in progress. So about the NAS revision, FastText is really an important tool for us, especially for two main issues: the flow, which is how we daily classify the activity of new enterprises, and the stock, which contains the historical firms from all these years until today. The problem with the stock is that not all textual declarations are retained in the historical database for privacy reasons. Some firms don't have the textual declaration because it was deleted in our data. So how we plan to use FastText. We plan to train it on for the new nomenclature on the NAF 2025 by using data annotated manually by human experts and converting some labeling activities in the flow. From the old nomenclature to the new one, we may have a one-to-one mapping between codes, but it's not always the case. And for that reason, we have several approaches. One is to use surveys for the sampled enterprises. And the other one is the approach I told you earlier, to use FastText on the retained textual declarations. Fortunately, even if we deleted some information in our databases for privacy reasons, we still have around 70% of legal units which still have the textual declaration in the case of ambiguous activity codes. And if you have more questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And so we have a few minutes here for questions. Just a reminder to mute everybody. And you can use the chat or raise hands. I thought I saw a hand go up. Let me see. There's one hand. Adrian Perez. You may unmute and give us your question.
So can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Yes, we do.
So, thank you very much for all the presentations. So I would like to ask about this last solution built with FastText. So if I understood well, the solution was built on a data set of 10 million samples. And these samples were, I guess most of them were labeled with the previous tool with something like Pico. Well, I don't remember the exact word.
Yes,
but
that's the case.
Yeah. So how did you manage to get so good performance, like a very, very high performance, if the data set was labeled with a tool that I guess had a quite worse performance?
We not only use the data from SICOR, but also data annotated manually. And how can I explain that? In fact, we have different complexity in the textual declaration. We can have some textual description that have only the good keywords, and and it's something that was surprising for us at the beginning that it works that well. But I just want to remind that we don't use utterly fast text for everything. In fact, I didn't talk about it, but for some kind of enterprises, we use deterministic coding. But even for the rest, we use for most of the time use fast text when the confidence is high. So in a sense, we use fast text when it's on the really easy activity description. So I think that may be one of the reasons why it works so well.
Okay.
I'm not sure if
I think I got it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that question. Not seeing other comments in the chat or hands. I think we should probably then move on to our next presentation so that we stay on time. Anang Laksano from ASEAN. Welcome, Anang, and your presentation is on sort of an echo of what we saw in the second webinar, but focus on the coordination within ASEAN and the harmonization and your efforts there. So of your members. So your slide is up there, and I think we can move forward. So welcome, Anang.
Thank you, Vincent. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. It is good to see you, and thank you very much for this opportunity. And in this occasion, I would like to present briefly on the effort of ASEAN Community Statistical System in the harmonization of ASEAN statistics. So basically, the ASEAN Community Statistical System, or ACSS, is a partnership between National Statistical System of ASEAN member states, ASEAN Community Council, and ASEAN Secretariat through our division, Statistic Division. And the objective is to facilitate the collection, production, dissemination, and communication of ASEAN statistics to support a rule base of ASEAN community. And in SSS, we have several major partners. The highest regional policy making or the coordinating body is SSS Committee, where the members are the chief statistician or head of National Statistic Office of ASEAN member states, and also head of ASEAN Secretariat Statistic Division or ASEAN Stats. And another partner is, of course, National Statistical System in all ASEAN member states, with National Statistic Office as main country focal point of ASEAN statistics. But of course, we also involve other data producing agency, such as Custom Authority, Central Bank, and other line ministries. And then the next partner is ASEAN Secretariat through our division as the regional focal point and also as technical arm of the SSS committee. And the last major partners is ASEAN Community Council, because ASEAN cooperation and integration covers so many topics, so many sectors, not only economic, but also socio-cultural and also political and security. In ASEAN, we have so many ASEAN sectoral bodies, and we SSS treat them as primary stakeholders, not only to provide guidance on data needs, but also to provide strategic direction of statistical development in ASEAN community. And to implement the activities, SSS have a strategic plan. The current strategic plan is from 2016 to 2025. And we see this strategic plan as also as a regional strategy for development of statistics. So if in national level we have NSDS, at regional level we have RSDS. And under this strategic plan, under this current strategic plan, SSS has a vision to be responsive in providing high quality statistics with the mission to provide relevant, timely, and comparable ASEAN statistics in support of evidence-based policy and decision-making, and enhance the statistical capacity of ASEAN member states as well as ASEAN Secretariat. Here in the mission, we emphasize the data quality, particularly the 3-dimension, relevant, timely, and comparability. And for comparability, this is essential because we have 10 member states. Of course, we want all statistics produced by 10 member states to be comparable. And the role of international standard and classification is crucial here. And to achieve the vision and mission, SSS has decided for major components or for main strategic objectives. The first one is institutional strengthening, enhancement of SSS and its sustainability. So mainly it deals with the strengthening at institutional level, the commitment, the coordination, interagency coordination, etc. And then the second major component is improvement of response to greater ASEAN data needs. Mainly it deals with the improvement in data availability and quality. And then the third major component is enhancing the dissemination, communication, visibility, and use of ASEAN statistics. And the fourth major component is bridging the gap towards sustainable development of ASEAN statistics. This is mainly because among 10 ASEAN member states, we still have a capacity gap that we need to narrow so that all 10 member states can move forward together in terms of improving the availability and quality of ASEAN statistics. And of course, the strategic plan then need to be detailed. So SSS also have multi-year plan and annual work plan. This is to translate the 4 major components into more detailed activities that all 10 member states as well as ASEAN Secretariat should be committed to implement. Yeah. And to monitor and evaluate our activities and achievement, we also develop and implement monitoring and evaluation framework, including the key performance indicators. And to implement the multi-year plan and also annual work plan, to implement the 4 major components, SSS established several technical working groups, which is very specific to deal with certain statistical area. We have working group on international merchandise trade statistics, international investment statistics, statistics on international trade in services, working group on SNA, working group on SDG indicators, and one working group especially dealing with data sharing, analysis, dissemination, and communication of statistics. And because we have these several technical working groups, we have multiple institutions within the country to be involved in SSS. Then we need to have subcommittee on planning and coordination. So the role of this subcommittee is as the right hand of SSS committee to do the day-to-day work, particularly for the function of planning and coordination. And go back to the one of the quality dimensions that is stated in our mission, comparability. Of course, all data, all statistics from 10 member states should be harmonized. And what I can inform you is that SSS is committed all 10 member states are committed to, as much as possible, to comply with international standards and also international classifications. But there are some cases where ASEAN needs to develop regional classification, for example. This is not to have different classification with international standard, but to make it more detailed to support the monitoring of ASEAN integration. For example, in the international merchandise trade statistics, of course, we follow harmonized system, the latest version 2022. But to support the monitoring of ASEAN integration, because we have free trade agreement, for example, we have tariff agreement. So ASEAN also developed what we call ASEAN Harmonized Tariff Nomenclature, or HTN, which we always follow the updating in the HS. Yeah. So this HTN is basically following the harmonized system, but we have additional digit, yeah, to support the monitoring of tariff implementation in ASEAN. But other than that, in other statistical area, in international trade in services, foreign direct investment, we always try as much as possible to follow, to comply with international standard, such as BPM6 and Manual for Trade in Services Statistics, the latest edition, and also BMD4, yeah, for FDI statistics. Where for the classification, we follow ISIC, the latest version, revision 4. And for trade in services, we follow the extended balance of payments services classification, 2010. Of course, in some cases, in some member states, we still found some deviation, both with the concept and also with the classification. But through regional cooperation in SCSS, time to time, we always try to minimize those deviation. And the next one, for SNA also, we are following the SNA 2008 and also ISIC revision 4. For price statistic also, we follow CPI manual. And for employment statistics, we have another example on regional work, yeah, related to the concept and standard. For employment statistic in general, we still follow the standard by ILO. But in the recent years, we have been discussing on informal employment. But in all 10 member states, we still have differences in the concept and definition of informal employment. So we have some works, some study on this informal employment until we have some kind of agreement so that we can produce and disseminate data at regional level. And similar case with previous statistical areas, we still have deviation in some part, in some cases with international standard, but SSS are committed to keep improving our compliance or to minimize the deviation with international standard. So this is what I can present to you, maybe a bit in more general level, but questions are welcome, and hopefully I can reply your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anang, and welcome comments again on this presentation, or even if there's some residual thoughts on what we saw before.
I'm sorry, I think I still have one slide. sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. We have a minute here.
Yes, sorry to miss this before. This is the challenges and opportunities. I will show you in general, maybe in the following session, one of our colleague from one ASEAN member state also will be there. Maybe you will see some more detail or practical cases. But in general, the main challenges that we are facing is the capacity gap among ASEAN member states. This is related with technological resources, human resources, and some other resources which are varied among ASEAN member states. And then the second big challenges is limited data sources. This is give us challenges for ASEAN member states to follow the international standard or classification completely. And then interagency cooperation still need to be improved, yeah, particularly between data producing agencies. For example, in terms of international merchandise trade statistic, between the statistic compilers and custom authorities, for example, and also with central bank and with other relevant ministries. But among those challenges, we also have opportunities. So far, we have good and close cooperation with our development partners so that they can continuously support us, particularly in terms of capacity building and also with international organizations. And then in the last 3 years, we have been implementing what we call ASEAN Have ASEAN framework for statistical capacity building. Because based on previous experience, we cannot fully rely or dependent on external support. Because as you know, maybe project capacity building project from development partners maybe will not long last, yeah. Maybe maximum 3 or 4 years. That is one issue. Another issue is that sometimes the issues that is existing in our region sometimes is very special that international experts from developed countries never met. Yeah, that's why we develop this ASEAN framework, because we believe among 10 member states, some of them have more developed than other member states, so that they can help each other. So in the last 3 years, we have implemented so many activities. Some of them are bilateral. Some of them we make it regional activities like regional workshop or regional training. And some of them are sub-regional, only involving certain member states. And to answer some issues in the limited data sources, we also already started to utilize administrative data and big data as well. Thank you again, Vincent.
Thank you, Anang. Yeah, it's important to have that regional context and perspective, and the need for mutual support across different regions is very important. So, thank you for that. Again, I'll invite any reflections or comments from the audience here. Okay. Well, I think then maybe we should can move on to our panel discussion. Our distinguished panel, and welcome them. And our moderator for the panel today is Ivo Havinga. He's a figure that is familiar to many of you. Ivo is a former assistant director for economic statistics at UNSD and continues to consult with UNSD as an independent expert. He is also a member of the Bureau of the UN Network of Economic Statisticians, and was very much involved in the foundation of that group. So with that, Ivo, I'll pass it over to you and welcome our panelists.
Thank you, Vincent, and thank you for a great kickoff with fantastic presentations. It's my great pleasure to moderate this panel of distinguished panelists. In doing that, I thought I'd do first a quick round of introductions. I will keep it brief to allow more sort of opportunity for interventions than long summaries of achievements. In order as they appear in the agenda, let me indicate that we have Chedra Keo. He is Director of National Accounts. Keo, thank you for being. He is from the Statistical Office of Cambodia. We have Jean-Pierre Poncelet. He is the Director Standards of Eurostat. Thank you, Jean-Pierre. We have Karen Orvis. Karen, welcome. She is the Chief Statistician of the United States. We have Eric Rancourt, a good friend of our Assistant Chief Statistician of Statistics Canada. Eric, welcome. And I don't know whether Stefan is yet on. I know he has been in a meeting, so he's running around also in terms of work on the Statistical Commission. The good thing is he will be the last in the panel intervention, so he will join us, I think, shortly. Before I go into the request for interventions, I would like to indicate the questions that we have. I will soon share also a slide which apparently we are still looking for, that has the questions for the participants. But let me just indicate them briefly. The panelists are well aware of these questions, so I'm not doing so much for the panelists as well as I do it for the participants, if you allow me, dear panelists. The questions, I've summarized them a bit to spend less time on the questions. There's the obvious why question. Why are we doing this? Particularly on the considerations of the more frequent updates of international classifications. While we are aware that there has to be a balance between the relevance and the stability of classifications, and we would like the panelists to consider why there is such an interest from the policy side on more frequent updates of these international classifications as we know, a foundation of our statistical systems. In addition to the why question, and here are the questions, there we go, we would like the panelists to think about the how. How can we actually improve, the frequency and a fixed cycle of international classification revisions, and how would that process look if we start to work more closely together with the countries, the regions, and at the global level on the update of the classification? So your consideration on that will be important. In addition to, let's say, the institutional aspects of updates and revisions of classifications, there may also be other challenges that you would like to reflect on from, your either country perspective or your regional perspective, or from the global perspective, and share with us the kind of issues you think that we should think about when we consider more frequent update cycles of the classifications. And then finally, there is, of course, in this whole consideration of these matters on the why and the how and the challenges, also considerations of more specifically what national statistical offices that you lead, or your role in the regional mechanisms, or your role at the global level. Either you're an international representative or you play an important role at the Statistical Commission. What sort of role do we need to take on to encourage a more regular update of these international classifications? For the overall, as we have been indicated in the earlier presentation, regarding the modernization of the statistical systems being more relevant in the world that we live in. So with that, in terms of the introduction of the panelists, very briefly, and the very brief introduction of the questions, I would like to turn to Chetro Keo to open his intervention. As I have discussed with the panelists and shared the orientation, I would like to allow for 2 rounds, for a more sort of deeper reflection in the second round. So if you could limit your intervention time for 5 minutes in the first round, and then we'll come back for another 5 minutes in the second round, and then hopefully we stay on point and we can close in time. Again, I also indicated to the panelists that these questions are more for guidance and framing, but they will not necessarily have to stay on the path that we thought would be important to consider. They may have other considerations that they might like to share with us in their interventions. So with that brief introduction, I turn now again to Chetro Keo. Keo, the floor is yours. You have to unmute, Keo, if you will. No, we can't still hear you. We don't hear you yet. Can you try again? No, we still don't hear you. No. Now you're muted again. Yeah, now you're on mute. No, we can't hear you. Maybe the best thing, Chetro, is that you disconnect and reconnect. Maybe then the system will start working. Is that an option? I hope it's not my system that I can't hear you. Is it me only, or the others can't hear you?
No.
Okay, good. Chetro, if you don't mind, I move to Jean-Pierre Poncelet while you try to work the system. We still can't hear you. And as I suggest, maybe you disconnect and then reconnect. Thank you. Jean-Pierre, can I give you the floor, please?
Yes, absolutely. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ivo, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks to the United Nations for inviting me today in this panel. And this is indeed a very good opportunity to express our view from the European side on such a fundamental element that statistical infrastructure is as part of classification. So, as you mentioned, Ivo, in your introduction, I would present my role here as coordinating the European statistical system. So this is our aim, or basic aim from Eurostat side. So there is certainly no need for me to recall the extent to which classifications, and in particular major economic classification, impact many aspects of our statistical work, as well as other administrative and business lives. So I would focus my intervention today on 4 elements. First of all, the relevance of classification. Second, the revision cycle. Third, the collaboration and coordination, and fourth, the efficiency of the process. So starting with relevance and stability, I would really argue that stability actually means relevance, and I would not try to oppose them and put them against each other. We have various stakeholders around the table, and there is certainly a common interest in stability to ensure relevance. Classification, and we know, are not an end in themselves. They are a mean for statistical work. So it's important to emphasize that one thing is to design and develop classification. Another key aspect, of course, is to implement those classification into the whole statistical production process. And based on our own experience in Europe, the frequency of revision and also detailed planning for implementation are really critical. So I would never insist enough on the importance of planning ahead the implementation, so we can see the result of newly developed classifications or updated classification in our statistical product. And therefore, we have to agree on the pace of a revision cycle, taking into account the views of the various interested constituencies, their constraints, not to forget to mention the resources and the skills that we need in our teams. Otherwise, if we would not do that, I very much fear that the risk would outweigh the benefit and would create unrealistic expectations. So we have to manage those expectations, and we have to avoid, I'm sure, those risks at all costs, and I will come back to the risk issue a little bit later. So as mentioned, it's fundamental to involve the producer of statistics in the debate, and communication on and around classification is also a must. And this meeting, of course, provides an excellent opportunity to communicate and to exchange on this aspect. The good news is that we do not start from scratch. We have lessons to learn from forthcoming implementation of the ISIC and the NACE. The NACE is the corresponding classification of ISIC from the European side. And when preparing for this implementation, this is an important element that we have to factor in our reflection for future cycle or update of the classification. Now, going to the revision cycle itself. We try from a European point of view to have a balanced approach to this issue of revision. Of course, as we all know, there were almost 20 years that have passed since the last revision of ISIC and NACE, which is, in my view, indeed inappropriate in our modern world. And classification should indeed reflect the structure of the economy, talking about economic classifications. And we should certainly not repeat this long time span in the future. So we are indeed certainly look favorably to more regular revisions, implementation of a research agenda, which would help trigger the revision of classification at an appropriate pace. So I think we should really look at the substance and the need for updating the classification. And this pace must be agreed, realistic in view of implementation. I hope you will forgive me if I'm a little bit technical here, but I think it's really important to really for all of us to understand that revision cycle consists of, as I mentioned, creating new classification, but also implementing it, and this start with recording statistical business registers, implementing classification in all products, regular time recalculation of time series. So there are really various elements and very complex issues that need to be factored in order to ensure that classifications are properly implemented. Of course, from the European statistical system point of view, we hear from Eurostat side strong arguments against a proposal to really rush and update production classification every 5 years, which is actually, as I understand, on the table. And this is based on our discussion with ESS countries, with other official statistics and other international organizations. So I mentioned risk before, and I think the main risk I see from our European point of view would be a decoupling between ISIC CPC and NACE CPA, which is a corresponding CPC. So I think we should bear this in mind when reflecting on the work ahead. And of course, we know that such a decoupling would impact, at least from those part of the world that would be decoupled. It would heavily impact the comparability, international comparability of statistics, and I'm sure that this is not the direction in which we want to go. So again, there will be a very good opportunity in 1 month in the UN Statistical Commission to discuss this important aspect, and certainly it will be needed not to rush any decision, to have clarity about milestone phases, practical implementation as a prerequisite for an informed decision by the Commission. So there is also another aspect that I would like to bring on the table and to our attention today, is that we have various classifications, and they are of different natures. there should not be any one-size-fits-all approach. I believe for their revision, some classifications are based on challenging concepts, as we know, like the ISIC, economic classification of economic activities. Others are less complex, and we could have a kind of adapted approach depending on the different classification. So now I would like to move to collaboration and coordination. The dialogue, in my view, between and the networking between the various stakeholders, both in international organizations, national statistical offices, has to be constant and omnipresent. So this is a dialogue and communication I mentioned before. We have to use the opportunities provided by new technologies, I'm convinced, in order to enhance this dialogue and networking. And I would like to share with you a few examples that we are developing from our side at the EU, the European Union level, in order to deepen this work and improve coordination and cooperation. So we have put in place a centralized classification server, for example, which make available to everybody interested the current and previous versions of classifications, corresponding explanatory notes, correspondence tables, classification rules, user manuals. So we have a single repository for that. And I believe this is a good starting point for sharing and exchanging on classification. We are also preparing an online updated index based on keywords in order to access classification. So it will help the users of classification to access and work with the classifications. And this will be open to input and proposal from internal as well as external stakeholders. And the third aspect I would like to mention is the promotion of the discussion and exchange of experience that we want to put in place. And of course, basically on what we call automatic coding of units in business registers. And this is based on artificial intelligence, machine learning. So I know that you have been discussing this also during this meeting. And actually in April, we will start in Eurostat a series of seminars which will be open to non-EU statistical office and organization. And everybody will be invited to present their project and tools on that aspect. So it will be a good opportunity to share new development using artificial intelligence, using machine learning in order to support the work of implementation of the classification. So as I mentioned, there will be a need for a continuous dialogue between the different stakeholders. I refer to a research agenda, and I think it's also important that it's accessible to everyone interested, and that we have a two-way communication approach. So not only that we get questions, recommendations, requests from stakeholders, but that we can also reply, give them some feedback, that we don't stay in our, so to speak, ivory tower, and that we really are open to dialogue. Of course, it takes resources, it takes time, but I think this is important for making our work known. The last aspect I wanted to mention is how to have a more efficient process for classification. So the first element is and something on which we have to invest and promote tools for, as I already mentioned, automatic coding of statistical unit in business registers. So this is one aspect on which we will have to work. I already referred to artificial intelligence, machine learning, or seminar that a series of seminars that we will organize in a couple of months. I think we should also improve the dissemination of statistical classification to facilitate access to classification. And this classification server I mentioned will be important in that respect. We also are developing an automated process in R. So this is the known, I believe, IT language in order to build correspondence table between classification. So it will help, of course, still with human interventions, but it will help to have automatic coding between the correspondence table. And certainly semantic web structure is with no doubt a field that must be analyzed and deepened. And we should also try to organize exchanges and among us, among the experts, in order to share practices in that respect. So I will conclude here by saying that we have indeed challenges in front of us in the field of classification. But I'm convinced that by bringing all actors together on the table, we will develop a sound, ambitious while manageable agenda for the future of classification, and building on new collaboration and technological tools I have mentioned. So classification is an investment actually to provide high quality statistical production. So it's not cost, it's an investment, and it requires the attention of senior managers in the various organizations. And actually this panel is already a good opportunity to draw attention to this. And it's an investment to the benefit of our users and to the credibility of the global statistical community. So I will stop here, Ivo, and thanks for your attention.
Ivo, please unmute your mic.
So I do due diligence by muting myself. That doesn't help to reopen it. I just, well, Jean-Pierre, thank you very much for, this elaborate intervention, and hopefully we can come back on some of the points that you have raised, which is important point. I will not summarize. The others will take this forward. I have been informed that Chatra is back. Chatra from Cambodia. Chatra Keo, can you open your video and see if we can get you back in now? Chatra, there you are. Can we see if we can hear you? No, still not. I'm sorry about that. But three times is, 2 times is charm, 2 times is not yet charm. So we have still options. So maybe you disconnect again and we make it work. I'm sorry about that. Meanwhile, I'll go to Karen, not to lose time. Karen, Orvis, as I introduced yourself, you're the Chief Statistician of the United States. Karen, great pleasure having you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Excellent.
All right, good. Well, just really an honor and excited to be a part of the panel today, to be able to share our perspective and discuss the different processes and the challenges of coordinating and revising international classifications. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. I'm going to start off by touching more on questions 1 and 3, the why, in this round, and then round 2, I'll discuss more on the how, the collaboration and the coordination. So in this round, I want to talk about the benefits that we see of having a regular fixed term schedule, and also that tension and balance between relevance and stability. Certainly the US recognizes the tension. Our data users, in fact, demand both. They are critical to measure both current growth and changes over time. And this includes our policymakers. They want to have relevant, timely data to inform policy decisions, but again, need some stability to be able to factor in changes over time in those decisions. So to set the stage, the US revises its industry and product classifications every 5 years. And we do so in close collaboration with Canada and Mexico. And for the US, the stability that's offered by this 5-year fixed interval allows a couple of important benefits for us. The first thing, it enables our statistical office in the US to both plan and budget for the adoption of revised classifications. And these activities then become part of routine operations and budgeting. And this is especially important when we're thinking about programming system updates, training staff, and other type functions like that. This predictability really facilitates not only the revision, but the implementation, which Jean-Pierre was referencing, to have success for us. And the fixed frequency also sets expectations with our data users as well in terms of when they can expect these updates on a regular cycle, which is really important for us. In the US, relevance is also important to balance here. So we tie our relevance to the timing of the every 5-year US economic census that's conducted by the US Census Bureau. So we all know that collections require a significant amount of preparations, budget, staffing to be able to implement. So for us, we're aligning the timing of our classification revisions of our industry and product classifications, which is our NAICS and our NAPs. Those are our acronyms, but we're aligning that with our U.S. economic census timing. And that really enables us to promote greater alignment with our economic data, including the economic data that really is benchmarked to our economic census data. We also try to address some of the tension on an operational level. So we provide correspondences that link revised classifications with the previous versions in order to help maintain continuity. And we have correspondences between multiple domains as well. That's really critical. So for example, correspondence linking production to trade data. I also want to offer a couple of other considerations to take into account when you're balancing this tension. First of all, it's important to exercise caution about reflexively turning classification revisions to be able to address emerging data needs. Oftentimes, an alternative survey method, questions, or data sources, that might be a better approach. We want to be careful on the revisions to classifications and that we're really considering them thoughtfully so that we aren't eroding the consistency of our classification principles. So as an example, in the US, our product classification system, it remains a reference classification for us right now. It's not a formal US statistical standard classification. And this does enable us to experiment a bit more than maybe a formal statistical standard would. And for example, we've seen that successful collection of product data can point to the viability of a new industry classification and also provides data for cross-sector measurements. So I'll give you one specific example. Compost manufacturing. We had a successful collection of compost product in the 2017 economic census, and that led to having a creation of a new compost manufacturing industry in our industry classification, the NAICS, for our 2022 revision. The last consideration that I'll offer in terms of revising classification standards is also a caution against revising classifications to be too detailed for disclosure criteria. So it may be possible to collect the detail, and that aligns with our goal of having increased relevance, but we may not be able to publish or disseminate it from the statistical offices that are covered by this classification. So I hope this just gives you a sense of how the US is using a 5-year fixed term schedule to meet our needs and balance that relevance and stability. I'll note that these revisions are made in coordination with Canada and Mexico through our trilateral steering committee, and I'll talk about that more in round 2, I think. But really see this as key. It provides a common language across our countries. It gives us the ability to have greater harmony, lets us have more timely data and more accurate measurement of growth and changes in industries and economic output. And so with that, I'll yield the floor to our next panelist. Ivo, you are on mute again.
Ivo, you're unmuted. Thank you, Karen, and we'll definitely come back to you on the why. Already these points are very important that you added to the intervention of Jean-Pierre. I again see Cetra. Shall we try again, Cetra? Whether we can hear you now? No, we have to work on your charm. You have to do it 3 times. I'm sorry about that. So try again. Hopefully we will have you back. Thank you. Meanwhile, I like to move on. Eric, my friend, the floor is yours to add on. My great pleasure having you. Thank you. Eric is Assistant Chief Statistician and responsible for standards at StatsCan. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ivo. Good day, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the UN Network of Economic Statisticians for allowing me to present here. Can you hear me well?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what I'll say is quite similar to or intersects with what my colleagues just said before me. but I'll try to put my spin to it. So I'd like to talk about the tensions that we talked about, the need to revise and the need for comparability, for stability. And I'll say a few words about the conditions of success to get that going. But before I do that, I always like to go back to the fundamentals. So we are essentially national statistical offices trying to produce inference, to provide information to society about populations. And the standards and classification schemes are key for users, but they're key for the statistical theory to uphold, because we're trying to define populations. They need to be complete, unduplicated, so that we can produce designs and methods that will lead to unbiased estimates. So no classification system, no statistical theory, because there wouldn't be populations. Populations here, of course, I mean all kinds, people, organizations, elements of nature and interactions between all of these. So if we look at the tension, given that, when we look at the need to revise often, that would push the limit to be complete revision all the time in real time. So that's a theoretical goal. And I'm not necessarily saying that we need to go that frequent, but that's the theoretical place we would like to be. So it's not possible, but because it's not possible, we shouldn't be hiding behind another extreme, which is 10 years or plus 20 years. That doesn't work. So there's a compromise somewhere. And Canada, US, and Mexico, we have found that 5 years seems to be a good place to function. How do we do that? There needs to be collaboration, sprints, and webinars like this series, this one today. This is very important, and that sort of collaboration is essential to make that sort of frequent revision functioning. There needs to be groups, international, to coordinate, but we have to be careful the same way as not duplicating units in the population. Let's not duplicate too much the work in different levels, and let's make sure that whatever format that we have in terms of groups, that format is enabling, but not a hindrance of procedures. So that's the first part. And if we look at the other side of the coin, there's a tension to not revise, to keep things stable so that we can actually have the time and define things and measure them. And this is key. Defining the classification and measuring, or defining population and measuring it, are two steps, as was already alluded to. And so how we implement the classification, this is complex in terms of resource scarcity, people, skills, dollars, but also the operational issues. I don't think it would be possible to go at a frequency that monthly or daily or that sort of thing. So as Karen mentioned, it helps planning if it's consistent frequency, but also planning is required to get the implementation happening in some frequency, especially if we go 5 years, or even if some countries in some cases might need to go more frequent than 5 years. So what are the conditions of success? Ideally, there is a permanent team that deals with standards and classification. In Canada, we have had the luxury or the advantage of having a team that looks at that. We have had the division at Statistics Canada for standards since the 70s. The issue here is to not have to start up or ramp up a team when there is classification. If things happen every 10 years, there's going to be 2-3 people working on this, and then it becomes obsolete or silent for many years, and then it has to be stood up again. This is what needs to be avoided. So if revisions are more frequent than that, there's a permanent team that can stay in. The size of the team depends on capacity, but ideally that continues to avoid the ramping up and ramping down. the work on the research, even if the adoption or determination of new classification does not take place so frequently, the research and development and the consultation, that can be ongoing, and it should be not happening just when classification is changed, but on an ongoing basis. And this is related to the fact that we internationally, we as a country, we need to be open to some specific developments in areas because of developments, whether they be digital or in Canada, we had cannabis becoming legal in 2018. And it was just a matter of months for us to prepare to have classification of industries, products, labor, types of work. We didn't have that for that industry. So we could not wait till the next international or high-level updates of classification systems. We had to be able to produce that. So there needs to be a mechanism or ways to listen to the business, listen to society, and align to the programs. What we do in classification is a response to the need of programs. We shouldn't be driving that. They should be driving classification, the programs. And then we can talk about that later. There's all the technical aspects of development that can help us improve the efficiency, machine learning, how we use tools and systems. My colleagues Stefan and Saman gave examples of that in Canada earlier this morning. And then I could talk about what we do in Canada domestically and internationally. I'll stop here for now. Thank you. Ivo, you're on mute.
Again,
third time's not a charm.
You got me there. Exactly, Vincent. Thank you. Eric, thank you. You built very nicely on what had been said. So we seem to be gathering very nice sort of rounded views on these questions. Thank you for that perspective. I now will turn to Stefan. I think I don't see Cetra. Stefan, my friend, the floor is yours. Your perspective from the international global community, but you know enough about the national levels. So looking forward to your intervention on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you all hear me well?
Yeah.
I see lots of nodding, so I take that as a yes. First of all, thank you. I mean, this is a great cooperation on this particular sprint between the UN Committee of Experts on International Statistical Classifications and the Network on Economic Statisticians. And that's exactly the kind of cooperation we need. And I look up on the numbers, it's over 200. That's why you even win the competition, because this is more than the first meeting I had this morning on the Statistical Commission, I think. So I also want to thank my partners and panelists, and we have a great panel here, partners from the international arena in the EU, and of course from the countries, important voices from developing and developed countries, so that's great. And Karen, thank you for doing internet hopping with me, because you were in the first meeting and we jumped over here. So I wanted to pick up a couple of points. I mean, first of course, that perceived dilemma between relevance and stability, but I liked what Jean-Pierre said, that of course stability is also an element of relevance, but we have that even if we look into our fundamental principles, and of course we like to do that at the international level. There is, on the one hand, it says, it reminds us to work according to strict scientific methods, and scientific methods are usually slow. And then on the other hand, it asks us to produce official statistics that meet the test of practical utility. So there is this dilemma that we are facing all the time with all of our norms, and so already inscribed there. And at the international global level, it becomes even more accentuated, because yes, we may be able intellectually to update a norm or a classification frequently, but then that's not the end of the story. We all know it needs to be implemented, and of course implementation takes a very different rhythm all over the world. So these are all the elements that we have to balance out. I mean, first of all, I am really happy that we are talking about classifications, because classifications are really the backbone of our statistical systems. And it was said earlier, they deserve the attention of senior managers. And I think this is what's happening here. So that's already very important. Somebody also made the point of linkages, and I would say there are sort of two types of linkages. Linkages over time. Of course, there are these various revisions from one level of the classification to the next, but also linkages between the classifications and linkages to all other systems. I think that is something that at the global level, we are very aware of, and I'm very happy, for instance, that in the discussions on the new SNA, we're not only talking strictly about national accounting systems, but we're looking at the whole spectrum of economic statistics, including classifications that are relevant. And this is, I mean, ISIC and CPC. So I think we need to also, when we discuss revision cycles, take into account what those linkages are, that we don't disconnect systems from each other. So it's not only within the small corridor over time, development and consistency, but also the lateral sort of linkages, I think, play an important role. And maybe at the global level, when we are responsible for the breadth of normative frames, we are also very aware of that. I wanted to make one point that was already mentioned several times, and it's also in the questions. Of course, technology helps. I mean, with the new technologies, we can move things forward more quickly. We can satisfy our users that are insatiable by definition. No statistician has ever satisfied their users completely, and it will not happen, I believe. But that's a good thing that drives us always forward. And I think, as I said, technology helps. And I think we heard a couple of examples this morning of how technology is helping us to move forward, to link over time, and to link between systems here. And I think we need to even focus more on that and learn from those who have invested and have the resources to invest. How can we apply that also for the rest of the world and for others? I mean, we're talking about modern platforms and the semantic web, and this is really something we need to look at even more. I think one important point is I want to reprise is the importance of implementation. I mentioned it at the beginning. Just developing a beautiful norm or a beautiful classification systems and then having sitting it as an intellectual construct on the shelf, that is of course not our objective. We really want to implement it, and that costs time and money. Like Karen's point about, what did she say, routine budgeting. So that is important that we plan ahead also, and that implementation is an integral part of the continuous development of our classifications and standards in general. And I think that the forthcoming Statistical Commission will look also at a revised mandate where the Committee on Classifications is giving more responsibility also to look on the implementation, because especially if you look at it from a global level, implementation becomes critically important. Because it's not trivial for many developing countries. They may need external support, but I'm always proud to look at our professional community as a community of solidarity also, and even the assistance given sometimes from the developed countries to the developing world is not only pure altruism, because we all benefit when the global statistical system speaks one language. And let's say I just have to look at trade relationships where we all countries in the world, of whether developed or developing, are fully involved. So if we have a clear standards in these areas, that will benefit all countries around the world. So that was an important point that I wanted to make. But I mean, we need to keep in mind that the development of a new classification or a new standard alone is, of course, not sufficient. We need to focus and also assign financial resources nationally, regionally, and globally to build, then to implement that. And sometimes this is a real challenge, because I mean, let's face it, most users do not immediately get very excited if you talk about classifications. They are considered an underlying infrastructural investment. But I think that's the argument that we have to make. As I said at the beginning, the classifications are the backbone and the potential linkage of all of our systems and so on. So the last point I just wanted to make is invite everybody, of course, to our Statistical Commission, which is coming very, very soon. We will talk about these topics, the importance of implementation and also the mandate of the committee and the various proposals. So I think this is classical UN. We invite everybody, we talk openly, we involve everybody. I mean, this webinar is an important preparatory step for the Statistical Commission. So I'm very grateful for the many people who have connected here. And I have bad news. I was a little bit late, but to compensate, I may have to leave early because I have to run to another meeting. So I'm not entirely sure I will make it for a second round. But if there's any particular question that is referred to UN Statistics Division, I'm happy to pick it up, and I'll be still around for a little while.
Excellent. Thank you, Stefan, for this and adding to the discussion from that global perspective. And you already came into, you know, bringing back some of the points made on these interventions. Now, Jean-Pierre, before I go back to you, I'm aware that Karen said she wanted to come back after she covered the how, the code to the why. So Karen, let me give you the opportunity to come back to that. And I think similarly, Eric wanted to come back and you know, in their brief intervention. So if that's allowed, Jean-Pierre, then I come back to you after Karen and Eric. Karen, the floor is yours on elaborating on your points earlier.
Thank you. I appreciate that and really have enjoyed the dialogue that we're having so far, and many of the points resonate with me, and I think we are in alignment in many ways. In terms of thinking about the how, I mean, again, we're thinking on a 5-year schedule for us, and we're doing so in close collaboration with Canada and Mexico. And maybe I'll offer a few considerations on how we have strived to improve collaboration and coordination at a national level and also internationally. First key one is governance. So I mentioned in the first round, we do have a trilateral steering committee with Canada, Mexico, and the US. And then within the US too, we have what we call our Economic Classification Policy Committee, our ECPC. But essentially, it's our body for interagency coordination across our government. And perhaps it could serve as a model for interagency coordination, especially for nations that may have a more decentralized system like we do in the US. But our technical body includes representatives for domains on energy, labor, transportation, education, agriculture, commerce, the National Science Foundation, and these are representing our various data compilers. And collectively, these interagency experts are working together to make decisions on proposed revisions and then implementation. And then they also represent the US in those trilateral conversations with Canada and Mexico. So I think that's incredibly important to really have all the players at the table discussing together. A second consideration is, and it came up in one of the questions, is how do we involve our expert communities, perhaps outside of the government, as well as broader stakeholders in a given country. And for the US, encouraging public and stakeholder input in this process is really important. And we have multiple mechanisms for which we have public engage on any statistical standard and classification revisions, and that includes changes to data collection methods. So for example, we have formal requests for public written comments, listening sessions, expert advisory committees, in-person meetings with policy offices, as well as other examples. I'm sure other countries use similar mechanisms as well. But we're always looking out for new ways to engage our data users and our providers whenever we're considering revisions to classification standards. And in doing so, we're also maintaining really good records on those comments and those questions, because that helps us build a research agenda for the next revision cycle. So even if we aren't necessarily able to address it in this one, those are things that we're tracking then for our research agenda. Another consideration is establishing formal agreements with your National Statistical Office and other international partners, and have talked about that a little bit already in terms of how we do that. Really helps with coordination, information exchange, dispute resolution, and it's that regular engagement that's happening not only during the, say, revision cycle itself, but over time too, to see what things are happening. We've already touched on, I think, through several of the panelists, and I definitely agree, need to have not only institutional support, but resources for classification work, and that's both internationally and nationally. Staffing and resources, no doubt, are, I think, top of everyone's mind. To be able to do database structure updates, data collection instrument updates, those kind of things. For us, though, again, it goes back to that interagency coordination too. It's not within a single agency for the US. It's really making sure we have the experts across the board involved in collective decision making. And then it was highlighted, I think, by Eric and others, participating and being a part of the UN working groups. I think that's really important as well to help us improve our coordination and collaboration. I think it helps us better understand insights across many of our countries and where there's alignment in our country's needs, and how do we better align statistical classifications across our countries? How do we share best practices, learn from each other, have that international comparability? I'll close because I know others are probably eager to say a few more things, but I very strongly feel that classifications are an investment in our statistical infrastructure, but that takes resources, it takes collaboration and coordination, but doing so really pays dividends for all that we do. So thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for emphasizing that it pays dividend on the investment, because I think that value and that dividend is important, and the broader context that you brought in, it's not only for statistics, it's in the broader use of it also for the private sector and other administration. Thank you for raising these points, Karen. Eric, also I want to give you the opportunity to come back after your first round. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to start by saying that I entirely agree with Stefan when he says that standards should not be designed and adopted to be on the shelf. At the same time, they can serve as a target, but taking into account the implementation work and all that, it's a target that needs to be attainable. So what should we be doing? We need to work on trying to reduce the time. We need to invest efforts and money, we internationally, domestically, to reduce the time between deciding to adopt a new standard and adopting it, and then between adoption time and implementation time. Those two time gaps is where we can work. And essentially, it is about making sure that there's skill set and that there are people and teams so that there's constant research and consultation, so that when there's a decision and there's to start working towards a new standard and the new standard is adopted, that time is reduced. And so the other one is directly related to efficiencies and ways of working within countries and being able to gather the funding. So in terms of technology, we've seen and we've heard, and I'm not going to elaborate on use of machine learning, large language models to automate classification, but also to automate the definitions when something new comes in. And this is an area that some work can be done. In terms of advocacy and getting decision makers to be much more aware of the importance of classification and getting momentum. In Canada, domestically, we've made a lot of efforts over the last few years, being heavily involved in the definition of a federal data strategy in Canada. Statistics Canada is a key player in that. And also we are involved in a data governance collaborative which is private-public, setting up and elevating the importance of standards nationally, so that it becomes something much more, much broader than just the statistical office. That the whole statistical and data system takes part of it, and so something similar needs to be done internationally, and we'd be happy to help if some countries want to hear about how we've proceeded domestically on that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for bringing that broader perspective of a data strategy more broadly in focus and the fundamentals of classification. Thank you for that. I turn quickly to Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre, your concluding observations, as you will, on maybe some of the highlights as you see them. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ivo. So indeed, I would like to focus on a couple of issues. So first of all, I think we all agree, and we should definitely keep in mind that we have a policy orientation. We are there to serve the users, and this is definitely what is driving us. So this is the starting point, of course. And following the interventions in particular of Karin, I fully appreciate from our perspective the benefit of having a fixed revision cycle for classification and being planning, supporting this work. And indeed, so from our point of view, then the question of the frequency, in particular for ISIC, is the key one. We were discussing also internally the importance of having permanent teams, and indeed, certainly kind of fixed cycle, fixed planning help in that respect. Just to recall that we have tens and tens of classifications, not only the one we are discussing basically today. So overall, we should keep this work in mind. Now, coming to the implementation side, and I would like to quote maybe something that we have in our European treaty, which is in Europe, we are, in the EU at least, we are united in diversity. So we have a diverse statistical production system in each and every country, and I guess this is even more important and even more diverse at global level. So we need to, in implementation, to get access to data sources, and there are surveys, there are many different dimensions. Just to recall this aspect. I think I mentioned the importance of governance. This is clear, this is key, and this is something which has to be looked at very, very carefully in order not to miss an elephant in the discussion. And last point from my side, which I mentioned briefly in my introductory remarks, is the importance of communication and expectation management, because of course we have been through a revision of our NACE, so our European ISIC, over the last couple of years, and whenever you open this and you open expectations, and you have to manage the expectations, not only from the statisticians and the producers, but also from all the users, and many of them, and we have discovered that there were many constituencies, not statisticians, using our classification. So this is also an important dimension that I think was brought to the table by Karin, if I remember correctly. And last aspect, just to also recall the offer, we will have a series of seminars organized by Eurostat in April, and this will be an opportunity to discuss technologies. So that's it from my side, Yvonne. Thanks.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre, and thank you, panelists, to stay on time. Also, we run a little bit over. I think Stefan left, as he indicated. I know he has to go across the street, as we call it. We are in another building, so. But then just let me, Vincent, just quickly in a few minutes to just wrap up. First of all, again, thank you very much, distinguished panelists. It was an important panel discussion, and you brought in new insights, which I think is very important. And you had about 200 participants listening into this conversation. So I think that will resonate across the globe, your considerations, which were on point. Just to highlight some of the points, I think you all talked about concept of relevance, stability, predictability, and transparency, and you say these issues have to be weighed, and increasingly we agree that stability and relevance come very closely together, but we would like to have more predictable developments and transparency coming forward in our considerations. So we have to weigh these new elements more strongly in terms of setting up the budgets and training facilities. I think it's important to pick up the notion that was set out that there's a difference between a legal environment for classification versus regulatory environment. I think the regulatory environment may be an easier environment to work in than a legal environment, but we know that in some cases there is a legal environment and that has to be taken into account. Technology has been referred to regularly. I think there's a clear opportunity to, as a backbone for classifications, to start to use the technology, as we call them, semantic web, open link data, that really allows us to develop an international sort of statistical automation systems from the global to the regional to the national level, so that we can follow each other's changes. I really understand very well that, as Karen indicated, that the revision cycles have to be related to the statistical production cycles. So there's an important consideration also about the frequency. If we want to have more frequent data, we also have to make sure that the classifications are at par going forward. Critically is the coalition of collaboration in this area that has been highlighted in several ways. And thank you, Jean-Pierre, for offering the openness of the door towards your seminar series on technology. These are important sort of new sort of avenues that we start to explore at the regional level, in addition to the national and the international level. So that's very important in making that available and bringing to the fore much more the dialogues that we have at these two different levels. And dialogue is key in communication around these concepts of predictability and transparency, to think about more frequent updates. As you rightly pointed out, Eric, that's the ideal everyday an update, but we will find the balance, I think, in that going forward. It has clearly been indicated that co-investment is necessary and the resources are necessary to make this happen. And we will debate it more at the Statistical Commission. Jean-Pierre, you have indicated very clearly, about, the position of the European environment in its diversity. How do we go around these issues and weigh the concept of predictability and transparency versus, the opportunity to actually make it happen in real life in terms of implementation and capacity building. I stop here. I really hope that I covered most of the points. But I'm sure that the full record will be played. The video is available for everybody to go through in detail to the interventions and pick up it. We will also prepare the minutes of this panel discussion to have it available and get the reflection of the panelists on what we concluded. With that, I turn to you, Vincent, to make the closing remark. Thank you very much. And again, panelists, thank you very much.
Yes, echoing that. Thank you very much to Ivo as well for moderating the panel, and to the panelists and to all of our presenters today. It's very much appreciated, and I hope this so this was the third in a series of webinars. I hope they all collectively have reinforced the centrality of classifications and the generation of economic statistics. And I think it also reminds us just how essential standards generally are to the proper functioning of integrated systems, whether we're talking about telecommunications, aviation, banking, you name it. None of these systems function without common standards to facilitate exchange and interoperability. And we heard a lot about that too today, and so the same is definitely true for economic classifications. So in order to be able to understand the relationships between production, prices, employment, trade balances, commodity flows, and to answer the key policy questions that are facing global leaders, including related to climate and sustainable development goals, that all that requires good data, and good economic data is simply not possible without robust and relevant classification. So it's perhaps not too much of an overstatement to say that classifications are essential for the health of the planet. So I hope that these messages resonate with within your countries and within your institutions. And as Ivo mentioned, the materials, the all the presentations and the recordings of this sprint, of this webinar, and all of the two previous ones are all available for viewing on the UNSD website from the Statistical Classifications homepage. So they're available there. And going forward, UNSD will summarize the outcomes of this sprint and present them at a side event during the upcoming Statistical Commission meeting in a few weeks. And finally, a word about upcoming events and programming from the UN network. This coming year, the network will continue its sprint program on topics like data strategies for statistical programs and projects, as well as the use of artificial intelligence in statistical production. So we heard a little bit about that here in this sprint, but look forward to more on that coming from the network. So with that, I will conclude and thank everybody for presenting and participating, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well done.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, UNSD, for organizing.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Ivo.
Thank you, Vincent. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Daniel. Bye.